You know, Dave, hazards are a great way in D&D to trim down your party's hit points and resources.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty awesome because they never even see it coming.
There's plenty of things that exist in real life that are just hideous to come in contact with.
Yeah, there are, Ted. So let's take some of those things from real life and turn them into Dungeons and Dragons things. Welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds by nerds, I'm Nerdarchy Dave. Today I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted, and today we're going to talk about real life things that could kill you in D&D.
Hey, do you want practical advice you can drop right into your Dungeons and Dragons game?
If the answer is yes, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button and to tune to that notification bell so you don't miss a single video.
This video was inspired by a kind of like infographic meme, whatever you want to call it, that was going around. And I had shared it on our Facebook page and I had shared it on our Instagram. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And it was called a Sandbox Tree, often referred to as a Dynamite Tree as well. And actually has a bunch of other nicknames like Monkey No Climb Tree, Monkey Pistol Tree. And it's just this horrendous thing. So I was like, well, what if we find some things that are kind of horrendous sounding and brought them into our Dungeons and Dragons game? Some of the things when we were looking them up, they actually sounded much worse than they were when we did further research. So we might have had to like ratchet it up a little bit. So we're going to give you 3 things that you can drop into your D&D game as inspiration for hazards to mess with your players. But before we jump into those hazards, let's give a shout out to our sponsor, Dungeon Fog. It's a great way to add some of these hazards into your game, in your map, which you can make over on Dungeon Fog, but you can do so much more over there as well.
Dungeon Fog is a great place that already has ready-made maps that you can just mirror or copy, put in right into your own portfolio, move things around, change things around. The software is really interactive and a lot of fun to play with.
Right. There's a lot of great assets you can use for building towns, villages, cities, and even dungeons and more. Whether it's a fantasy game, a modern game, a science fiction game, they got you covered over there. Not only that, it is free to sign up for it. Then there is 2 paid tiers as well. Now, if you sign up for one of those annual subscriptions and you use the promo code Nerdarchy, you're going to get a 10% off. Yes. And not only that, one of those tiers is actually a commercial tier, which that means you can use the Dungeon Fog assets and create maps with them. And if you're a creator over on the DM's Guild or RPG Drive-Thru or just on your own website or whatever, you're going to be able to take those maps and use them legally. So I think that's a great, awesome way to make use of Dungeon Fog.
If you're out there and you want to try out a new map making program, we highly recommend you check out Dungeon Fog.
You know, let's jump into these things that, well, they could kill you from real life.
All right, so do we want to start off with your, Dynamite Tree, or do we want to save that one for the end?
We're gonna save that one for the end because we're gonna work our way up from like kind of a nuisance to this is going to kill you.
Yeah, the first one that we're going to talk about is the teddy bear or jumping cholla. The great thing about this is it looks like a regular plant. It would be looked at as cotton by the average person that walked by. But if you disturb it, it drops, its little seedlings, its little, fibers that break apart into microscopic needles that have the ability to burrow as you move completely through your skin. Medically, it takes a lot of work to get these microscopic needles out, and it's incredibly painful. Whether the cholla has the ability to kill you or not, I don't know, but it's definitely painful. It's definitely annoying. But how would we ramp something like this up?
All right. So first of all, okay, maybe it's not going to kill you, but it's definitely a nuisance and annoyance. One, natural hazards tend to be a low DC, but the thing is, when you go through a lot of it, you might not notice it at first. Like you said, it looks like cotton, and you're like, whatever, you're cutting your way through, or you're just going to plow through it. Doesn't matter. But next thing you know, you're making DC checks. It's low, like a DC 11 or something. But when you fail it, then you're going to die 3 points of damage. This stuff burrows into your flesh. And I took a little inspiration from the undead, and that is until you remove it, which takes a minimum of a short rest to do, you can't regain your hit points you can't regain Daniel's hit points because it's not doing damage to you. It's lowering your maximum hit points.
That is pretty harsh of an effect for something that's just a natural hazard. So if you're looking to use, this in an adventure where You want to put the party up against something that, might not normally be a threat. They're going through a field of these things before they get there, because that's the only way to get there. In the time restriction that they have, their hit points are going to be lower, and they're not going to be able to heal it back. So you've got a lower hit point threshold to work with.
Not only that, other creatures that are familiar with the Cholla plant, they might know what's going on and might use it to their advantage. Pushing and maneuvering the players so that they have to deal with this obstacle. The obstacle is going to slow them down. It's going to count as difficult terrain. Maybe these creatures are indigenous to the same region that the Cholla plant is, or the Cholla cactus is, so it doesn't affect them. Some animals or creatures are just naturally resistant to this stuff, and they could even live in it, perhaps striking the players from it and then retreating back into it, where now the players have to come up with a strategy. Maybe initially they don't even know that there's a threat there, so they just charge headlong into it, like, I'm going to take care of this thing and get rid of it.
And meanwhile, they're going to get wrecked.
In the meantime, they get to deal with the problems. And maybe the problem is like because it's like a cotton-like substance. Maybe it's a little bit higher off the ground. Maybe it's snakes. They live underneath. They don't have to worry about it because they're not really disturbing the cotton substance itself. Or it could be something else. It could be flying creatures. Could be ogres that have learned their lesson to stay away from it. So instead of just attacking the players, they're picking them up and throwing them into it, so they have to deal with it. So you could do all kinds of fun things like that. Maybe it gets harvested, and goblins fill like bushels of this stuff, and then they dump it from above on the players, but before initiating their attack.
So all fantastic ideas, to deal with something that actually exists and how to ramp it up D&D style.
So next up, I was like, you know what? I always hear about divers encountering and having a problem with fire coral. And I'm like, this could be really cool. It's a bright yellow, green, and brown colors. And I know if this stuff just scratches you, causes all kinds of problems. When I first initially looked it up, it was like, you get scratched by this stuff, intense pain for 2 days to 2 weeks. And I was like, oh my gosh, this stuff is horrendous. When I actually looked at it a little deeper, it's not nearly as bad as it actually sounded. But we could always ramp that up for D&D. And what if, instead of only having it be aquatic, you actually, coated cave walls with it or something, especially narrow passages?
So you coat cave walls, make a golem out of it, you animate it. There's all kinds of ways to have this thing be so much more of a threat. But I mean, if you want to go, start off small, you put it on, an underground, water bank. You put it there, and maybe the bright yellow and green colors, attract the attention of those greedy adventurers to be like, "Ooh, what is this?" And they reach down to touch it.
You could always do fire coral mimics. All right, this one's really simple. It's a touch effect. If you touch it, you make a con saving throw, and then if you fail, you have a poison condition, and you're going to need either a lesser restoration, or you're going to have to make maybe checks each day until you finally get rid of it.
And if you really wanted to ramp that up, I mean, is it causing enough pain that they're not going to be able to rest? Is this going to attract levels of exhaustion if it's not dealt with?
Yeah, they're all things that you can incorporate in your game. Depending on how much you want to ratchet it up. The simplest way for me was just go, all right, poison condition. Maybe it's not actually poison per se, or it could be. The interesting thing about fire coral, it is actually a living organism, and it kind of wants you to die so that it can eat you.
So with this, you could have someone who's naturally immune to the poisoned condition because they're resistant to poison. And this could be something that if you wanted to kind of bend or tweak those normal rules, be like, well, it's not poison, but it mimics those effects, so you're not immune. Ha! So I guess we should actually look at your Dynamite Tree.
Yeah, the Sandbox Tree, the Dynamite Tree. Oh my gosh, this stuff is terrible. Like, the more I read about this one, the worse it got. Like, the other ones, okay, we had to tweak them and make them a little more deadly for D&D. Not really with this one. This tree just randomly explodes, or I should say the fruit explodes from it. So it's got these the pieces of fruit, they're kind of like gourds. They look like little pumpkins with 16 seeds kind of arranged. And what happens is after they dry out a certain amount, there's a effect called ballistatory or something along that nature that causes them to like open up and fling these seeds out at up to 160 miles per hour. I've said it. I've seen a range of 60 feet, and I've seen a range of like 130 feet, and I've seen a range of like 330 feet. I'm not sure what it is, but at 160 miles per hour, that is equivalent to firing an arrow from a bow. It's basically the same speed.
So that is certainly enough that if you're just a random person walking by, this could easily, kill or debilitate you in real life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But wait, there's more. It's also poisonous.
So if this gets in your eyes, you wind up becoming blind. Go
Yes,
figure.
it can blind. It's a poison that can blind you if it gets in your eyes. If it gets on your skin, it's an irritant and can cause rashes. Not too bad. If you eat it, it can give you diarrhea and cramps and some other things as well.
But yet somehow in all of this, the tree can be harvested for medicinal properties.
Yes,
Go
and not
figure.
only that, people also harvest the expended fruit and other parts of the tree to make jewelry and stuff because of the natural shape of the fruit. It's already looks like a dolphin or a porpoise, so a lot of times they get carved into that kind of stuff.
All right, so now we've gone through the crazy real life stuff. You know, based on the conversations that we've had, I would like to lovingly, call this thing the Goblin Boom Tree.
The goblin, yeah, that's a great idea. You can even find videos on YouTube of people exploding these things. So the fruit has almost like a gourd in it or a core, and they smash one side, and when you smash the other, both of them break. Then it kind of explodes, and you kind of can see how it works. We gamified the dynamite tree, and this is what we came up with. Anytime you travel through an area where these trees are, there's a 25% chance that they will actually go off. They automatically start going off if there is a loud noise or explosions in the area.
Or if, you actually touch them or damage them.
Or yes, or you touch them or damage them, all of that will cause them to go off. And in that area where they are, even if one of them goes off, then others will start going off as well. It creates a chain reaction. So roll a d100 to see how many rounds this is going to go on. And then every time they go off, you roll a d6 minus one, and that's how many of the fruits have targeted the party. So then the party can roll dex saves. It's not too bad, just a DC 13.
But it's going to do 3d8 points of damage into a 10-foot radius sphere. So lots of fun.
But there's more.
If you wind up failing your saving throw, you're blind, which is going to give you further disadvantage on any subsequent saves from the cascading effect of these things continuing to go on and on and on.
Now you'll make a saving throw every round to shake off that blindness, and also as if the players come up with a clever way to silence the area, they will stop going off. The silence spell would work fine; it would shut it down. Otherwise, you can drop prone and get advantage on your saving throws and try and wait it out, or you can just run for it. Now, depending on how big of an area you decide to infect with these trees, it depends on how devilish of a DM you want to be, but it does say it is a invasive species.
So we were talking, about using these in a game, off air, and it's like, you could do a whole thing where if the players wind up surviving, and they could ask, when did these things appear? And a reluctant NPC could be like, they only showed up about 8 months ago, and the horror that the PCs have gone through. It's like this all happened in 8 months. Oh dear Lord.
And that being said, these are full-on trees. They're 30 to 90 feet tall, even bigger. So you could have a whole forest of them. We like the idea of kobolds and goblins kind of experimenting and using these things as natural defense, as weapons.
Projectiles. Forget dealing with regular explosives. We're going to use naturally born explosives. So they'd whack one side to get it charged, and then they would throw it so that the second charge would essentially cause it to explode upon impact.
Yeah, it's a very venerated and highly decorated position in the goblin hierarchy, but unfortunately it's also a short-lived one because there are a lot of hazards and mishaps that happen along the way.
3d8 points of damage is usually enough to take down a goblin even if they pass their saving throw.
So with that, what do you think, folks? Would you use this kind of stuff in your game? Do you want us to take more real life stuff and kind of D&Dize it for your game? Let us know. We got a place where we can discuss that. It's down in the comments below. While you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
On your way down there, don't forget to stop by the description and check out the link to Dungeon Fog.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.